want to go out and like really, really do something.
I say it, I say it again. You've been had. You've been took. You've been hoodwinked. Bamboozled.
It's a celebration, fellas. Salute.
Always do the right thing.
That's it?
That's it.
I got it. I'm gone.
The way of the future. The way of the future.
The way of the future.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to Duel of the Greats. Folks, we've got one heck of a show for you this week. This week is our Buried Secrets week, and we have Martin Scorsese's Cape Fear, 1991 movie starring Robert De Niro, Jessica Lange, Juliette Lewis, Nick Nolte, very good cast, and Spike Lee's Red Hook Summer, starring Clark Peters and a lot of other actors who not really they're known in the Spike Lee verse, and we'll get to this because anyway. uh, so yes, those two movies will be going head to head this week, and I had not seen either of these movies before this, and I have lots of thoughts, and I think that we all do. So we're just gonna roll straight into this. Nate, you came in hot and heavy on this right before the show. I think you got a lot to say. Lead us off here. Red Hook Summer. First of all, start with which one do you want to start? You can choose on which one we want to start with.
I guess I want to start with Red Hook Summer because, and I mean, we say this at the top of everything, like there's a huge twist toward the end of Red Hook Summer that we're just going to have to talk about. So, like, obviously, if you haven't seen Red Hook Summer, you got to go watch the movie because it's going to ruin the movie. I had never seen Cape Fear, but I knew that Cape Fear was this very suspenseful Hitchcockian thing where Martin Scorsese is like, purposefully almost creating kind of this old 40s, 50s Hitchcock style film noir in his, in sort of a current way in the early 1990s. Red Hook Summer, the theme of this week was buried secrets. And so I knew that there's a buried secret somewhere in Red Hook Summer, a movie that I had not seen. And yet when I watched it, it really comes off like this kind of vibrant slice of life sort of movie. Um, it's another one. I mean, Spike Lee himself has said it's kind of part of his Brooklyn series. I mean, it depicts these black communities in Brooklyn. You get to see Mookie there for a second. Spike Lee reprises his role as Mookie, and he's carrying around a pizza,
Okay,
which
so
I thought was very.
I want to stop you right there just because I want to talk about this movie being the nexus point for the Spike Lee cinematic universe. Okay,
It
because
really
we've got
is.
we've got Mookie from Do the
There's a
Right
lot of
Thing.
questions now, right?
Yeah, we've got one of the women who has just a very very small role, but she's known as Mother Darling, is played by the same actress who played Nola Darling, and She's Gotta Have It. The deacon in this movie, Deacon Z, that actor is also in the movie that he made right after Red Hook Summer called The Sweet Blood of Jesus,
Well,
in
he was
which he
also
plays
Errol in Clockers.
That's true. He was also Errol in Clockers, but he's the same character, presumably. He's the same name, at least, in The Sweet Blood of Jesus. But instead of Deacon Z, he's Bishop Z in that movie. So we've got like all these sort of weird connections happening that it's clearly some intentionality there, but I don't know if it's just like probably just a tongue-in-cheek thing. But sorry, I thought that was kind of fun noticing all that. Maybe the funnest part of that movie for me, but I just thought that since you went ahead and brought that up, I thought I'd throw that out there now for the
Oh,
Spike Lee cinematic universe there.
Yep, and it's clearly very purposeful. He actually says, I have him right here. Lee calls the film another chapter in what I call my chronicles of the Republic of Brooklyn, New York. And those movies are She's Gotta Have It, Do the Right Thing, Crooklyn, Clockers, He Got Game, Jungle Fever, and now this movie, Red Hook Summer. And so all of those movies that I just said, they are a little bit different. They obviously don't all have the same plot, but they all are kind of depicting Black Americans in Brooklyn and doing so in kind of these interesting ways. This movie looks like it's going to do that. What this movie really, how I'm watching this movie, is it reminded me a lot of the first two-thirds of this movie reminds me of a movie called The Florida Project with Willem Dafoe. And if you haven't seen that movie, it's a fantastic movie, and it's this very slice of life movie about these very poor children living in these motels in Orlando outside of Disney property. Um, and it has all child actors, and none of them, of course, were professional actors, and it kind of uses that, direct cinema style. And I know this movie, like the child actors in this movie, he got them actually from like a local school and they had never acted before. And I'm watching this going like, okay, this is kind of a cool slice of life thing. There's not a lot of suspense though. And then this twist hits and it completely changes the tone of the movie. And what was so strange about this is I almost felt like this movie really could have been great without this completely random twist at the end of the movie. I'm going to go ahead and say the twist so that people kind of know what we're talking about as we're talking about it. That this young man has gone to live with his grandfather over the summer, and his grandfather is this very fervent preacher and is very much a man of God. He's got pictures of Jesus all over the house and stuff. And then, probably about two-thirds into the movie, a person shows up in the congregation and reveals very publicly that this man, the Reverend, this kid's grandfather, basically molested him, sexually abused him when he was a little boy. And I just felt like it really threw me off. I don't know. I want to get you guys' opinions on whether or not you think that was earned because it feels so thrown in, and I just don't quite know why. I felt like he had this really great sort of slice of life movie, direct cinema kind of movie, and then it just really goes off the rails there for me. But I want to get what are you guys' Steve? What is your opinion on this twist in this movie, and what did you think of that?
So I okay. I like slice of life movies sometimes. They can be good, but I was bored out of my goddamn mind with this movie. Part of it is because I'm not very religious, and it just seemed interminable. And I don't know if some of the setup was to make us feel like Flick. That's the nickname of the boy that's spending the summer in Brooklyn. To put us in his shoes. Like he doesn't want to be there and listening to hanging out with his grandfather, the bishop, and listening to these sermons. But some of the times when we were in the church and we would hear entire sermons and hear like multiple songs. And
Those scenes do, yeah, they go on a really long time. You kind of feel like it's really driving the point. It's almost like a filmed sermon. It's almost like
yes,
you kind of have gone to a church service. Yeah.
it absolutely felt that way. And so that just bored the hell out of me. And I I I watched this second. I watched this after Cape Fear. Um I don't know if that was a mistake. Um because obviously they're quite different tonally as as we've talked about a little bit and we will get back to. But also, and I had no problem criticizing actors and actresses when they're adults. I feel a little bad with the kids, especially because apparently these were not professional child actors. These were local Brooklyn kids that when he went there, he tried to kind of do the shoot in a guerrilla style apparently, and like a lot of the filming of the quote unquote the projects that he's filming it, like they didn't even tell the locals that they were going to be filming it until like after they started shooting. So some of those reaction shots in the background and stuff are legit. Um, but anyway, the main characters, he went to a local elementary school and had the drama teacher say, "Hey, who are some kids that you have that are really good? These are local kids." And that's who he put in the movie. So I feel kind of bad saying this, but I don't think the two main child leads had the chops to hold this movie up. Which is a shame because we've seen some really good child acting in this series that we've done, even in this season. The I can't remember the character's name, but in Clockers, the kid that plays off Mekhi Phifer's character. That we just saw that a couple seasons, or excuse me, a couple weeks ago, and now here we have two, you know, two actors who are trying, but it's clearly their first go around, and I just don't know that the weight of the story can be borne up by their skills at that point. Anyway, between that and just some of the dialogue, I felt like was just so stilted, which I'm sure some of this was intentional. I was so tired and so bored, and then Chekhov's "There's somebody here who needs saving" pays off, and Coleman Domingo stands up, and I wrote down in my notes, "Now here we go. This is interesting." So I love the twist just because it's action. There's something happening. There's plot development. I guess if there's one thing I've learned doing this podcast so far, it's I need some sort of plot. I can't just watch a movie with just pure characters, just characterization. I have to have some sort of plot development here. Now, does the twist work in the context of the movie? Does it pay off? I want to hear Jeff's take on everything before that, but until we dive into it. But I think it raises a whole bunch of questions. In the immediate aftermath, I sat there not the whole time, but for the next 5 minutes trying to figure out the timeline. Like, so wait a second, how old was Flick's mom, Bishop Enoch's daughter, when all this was happening? Why, did she know about it? And then we do subsequently learn she did know about it. Bishop Enoch molesting the child down in Atlanta. In which case, why did she send her son up to stay with him for a summer?
I was gonna mention this. Like that was
Yeah.
the thing that afterwards I'm watching it and I'm like, I literally wrote down word for word, why the fuck would Silas's mom send her to this man?
Yeah. When I guess I don't want to get into it. I don't know enough about recidivism and rehabilitation and all that to speak, coherently on whether or not people that have committed crimes such as that can actually be rehabilitated. I don't want to make any assumptions or jumps in logic there, but in the movie, we know that his mom, Flick's mom, Bishop Enoch's daughter, has like never forgiven her dad for just the way she was raised. So she's already got a grudge against him. So why in God's name is she even sending her son there to hang out with him at all, let alone the fact that he's knowingly preyed on boys that are this age? I don't know. That raised a whole bunch of questions. There were a couple little things in the movie that I did like. I'll come back to those. But to answer your question, Nate, I love the twist because it finally introduced something to move this slow molasses freaking movie along. So, there we go. Jeff?
So I'll start by saying that I did not like this movie, and I will. That's not giving away my vote because I will give full disclosure that I hated both of these movies. So now, for me, it was a little bit.
Sorry to interrupt, Jeff, but I'm glad we needed a movie like where we all hated we needed a week where we all hated the movies. I kind of feel like we get so into these where like I love this movie, well, I love this movie
Yeah.
too. Like this is good for us that we did not like these movies because I'm kind of the same way. I was not a
Oh,
huge fan of either of
You
these
guys didn't
movies.
like Cape Fear?
as rewarding as last week was for the two movies that we all loved that we hadn't seen, this week being two movies that I hadn't seen, it almost completely canceled it out because of how much I hated both of them. And I did not like Cape Fear, Steve, but we'll get there. We'll get there. Don't
I
you
just
worry.
Listeners, we have not discussed these movies at all yet, aside from just a one-off line. in our chat group, but I did not realize that they disliked them. Okay, all right, all right, all right.
So my viewing of Red Hook Summer might have been a little bit different because in I hadn't seen it, but in researching the movies for this season and what would go thematically, we came to Buried Secrets because I had found out about the twist by reading the Wikipedia page for the movie, so I knew that was coming. But going in, so I grew up Catholic. I went to Catholic grade school, Catholic high school, very much in that world of very like lots of religion all the time. So I seeing that and knowing not only what the I mean, there's everyone knows now obviously what the Catholic Church had done in terms of fostering these pedophiles and covering for them and doing all that thing that they had done for decades and decades. And then but just in general, growing up in that world, even if I didn't have any personal experience with any of that, nothing happened to me, I didn't know anybody that anything happened to, but there's still an element of like using religion as a shield for yourself, and whether it's pedophilia or whether it's something that's not as bad but still, maybe you're just a shitty person, and maybe you I don't know, maybe you whatever the case may be. There are people that do that, and when you grow up in very religious focused communities like that, you encounter lots of them, and you can begin to tell who they are. And so I did think it was kind of a little interesting at the beginning because maybe it was shaped a little bit by the fact that I knew the twist, but I think just like knowing that world a little bit from my upbringing, immediately, the guy's got Jesus plastered everywhere. There's crucifixes, there's paintings, there's posters, there's all this stuff. And there's even like a little bit of an interesting point where when Silas first arrives and he calls it out, he's there's a picture of in the room that he's going to be staying in, there's a painting of Jesus, and he says, isn't Jesus black? And Enoch says, well, we don't know what color Jesus was. And then Silas points to the painting and he's like, well, why is he white in that painting? And he just kind of like shrugs it off. And so you've got this sort of element of like, okay, the outward picture of what we see from people is not always accurate, just like a painting of Jesus as a white person is not accurate. Excuse me, regardless of whether or not we know what the actual shade of his skin tone was, we know he wasn't just a white American guy like he's often depicted as. So that whole thing, that setup is kind of interesting there, and I think that's a little bit of foretelling for what happens. And then when you have somebody just this so I've encountered so many people of those, just like every single thing, every interaction, every single thing, their entire identity is God, and have a blessed day, all this stuff, and it's just constant and it's exhausting. And so I think there was actually a pretty good job of capturing that to a little bit. But yeah, then they go into these like long sermons, and there's all this stuff, and then there's this little slice of life. And Steve, I struggle with this as well, because I talked to my wife about this, and I was like, I feel bad when it's little kids like that, and it's hard, especially, I didn't know the part that they weren't actors, because the girl who played Chaz, the who was living in the projects that she ends up befriending Silas or Flick, she's never been in anything else. The guy who played Flick, he's been in a few other things, because I looked him up just because I was curious, because this was made in 2012, so 12 years ago they could have. It's a long time. They could have been in more movies, but he's been in a few other things. But um, I just they again, I struggle to say it because I don't want to be too critical of kids, but they wasn't very good, to be honest. And so it that kind of becomes distracting a little bit at and then especially because for me, like Clark Peters is Bishop Enoch, And for anybody who's watched The Wire out there, he played Lester in The Wire, who's my favorite character from that show. I love Clark Peters. He's such a good actor. He was in Treme. I love that show. He was so good in that show. Um, and I mean, he carries this movie. Obviously, he pretty much has to. But when you have such a good actor like that, and he's constantly interacting with these kids, it just makes it more apparent that they're not up to the task, and it's not their fault. Absolutely not. It's Spike Lee's fault, honestly. And anytime I was kind of thinking about this as I'm turning it over in my head, talking about the children actors, and I think it's more so than just about any other acting. Child actors are a much bigger product of their directors, I think, because it's the director has to put the child in a position to where you can get the good performance, much more so than an adult actor who's been doing it for a long time. And there's a reason why then you have certain directors who are really good at directing child actors. Spielberg from last season, we talked about this multiple times, how he's one of the, if not the best of all time. M. Night Shyamalan, same kind of deal. He's very good at directing child actors. So, the good directors are good at it for a reason, and I just don't think that it's Spike Lee's forte, and that's okay. But unfortunately, this movie suffered because of it. Now, when you get to the twist, um, I thought like that scene was phenomenal. That was the absolute best scene in the whole movie. Coleman Domingo was fantastic. He was just nominated for an Oscar just this past year for The Color Purple. And I think this was one of his earlier
Different
movies.
movie, but he was. You're right. He was nominated for.
Oh, was it? I thought it was Color Purple. What movie was it?
I believe it was Rustin.
Oh, okay, my bad. Um, so
But you're right. He
anyway,
was also in The Color Purple, which was.
okay, yeah, that's why I was confused. I thought I was like, I swear he was in
I
Color.
think.
Okay, so anyway, but yes, he was nominated for an Oscar this past year, and he was very good in this movie, in this short, very small role that he played, and that confrontation scene was very good. And I think
The great use of his tracking shot. Like you always
yes,
kind of wonder when Spike Lee's going to pull that out, and but it's used to perfection in that
yep,
scene. I really
Oh
did
yes.
like. I did like how he utilized that. That was great. I thought.
absolutely, just very slow crawl from the back, because I guess the way this particular um, church worked was, if somebody was looking to join the church, they could come in and sort of not audition, but sort of try it out and see what it's like and sit in the very back. And then they could, then that way they knew, oh, hey, this is a new person this week or whatever. We can ask them if they want to be a part of the church. And they show this process happening with a woman who is there, and then she stands up, and then he's like, oh, so and so is going to get your contact information and we'll get you in.
I think he was literally asking if they were ready to be saved, ready to be baptized,
Yeah,
because that's
yeah,
how it
because yeah, he was
worked.
talking about, we'll schedule your baptism,
Yeah,
like, okay.
because I was
So
raised Southern Baptist, and it's very similar. In every
is it okay?
service, there's a call that says, "Is anyone here ready to accept the Lord into their heart?" And people, whoever that day decided they heard the call, they come down and I mean, it's unplanned. I mean, I assume it's planned by the people. I mean, it was when I did it when I was 11 or 12. But yeah, it's a thing. It's an every week thing. So
Yeah, it's much more of a bureaucratic process if you want to become Catholic. There's a whole, you got to take all these classes. You don't just show up one day and say it's
hashtag Martin Luther was right. Look at us refighting.
there you go. We're bringing it up right here. Um, but anyway, so the twist happens, and I was like you, Steve. I was like, okay, this was actually good. And then um, there's only like 20 minutes left in the movie, and so the twist happens, and then shortly after that, because there's this like subplot about these drug dealer gangster types. They said they're bloods that sort of hang out in the courtyard of this apartment complex, and they don't like, they suspect something not great about Bishop Enoch, and then we also learn that It was one of the drug dealers, his mom, who was very involved in the church, but for some reason that she never explained, didn't trust this Bishop Enoch and would never tell anyone why. So we kind of about halfway through, we get that little nugget, and so then we're like, okay, what's going on here? Um, but then after everything comes out and the accusation that happens in the service, then those guys from the courtyard, they come in and they just beat the crap out of him, out of Bishop Enoch and they were like, we knew, you were shady and all this stuff. So that happens, and then he's all bloody and you know barely able to walk, but he goes back to his apartment, and then his grandson, like kind of like helps him clean himself up and is just sitting there, and he asks him if it's true, and then he says, I want you to pull out your iPad and record this so that I can, get it out there. And he admits to the whole thing, and he gives all the details and he explains it all, and then he says, but I was cured by Jesus. And so it's this sort of weird thing, and then it just stops. Like they have this short scene where they go, somebody must have reported it to the police, because the police come and they have this lineup, and Bishop Enoch he says he doesn't recognize any of them, even though all the people that beat him up were right there in the lineup. um, but he covers for them so they don't get in trouble, essentially saying he does, a tacit way of saying he deserved it. And then they go home, and then the next day it's time for the and then right after, he says, god, this is truly one of the places where I lost it with this movie, where the right after the lineup, when they're the two cops, who, by the way, one of them was the talk about the Spike Lee verse, one of them was the agent from He Got Game, that's just super slimy agent, and the other was I can't remember the name of the actor, and I think his name was like Clay Shaw or
Yeah,
something.
Clay
In
Davis, Isaiah
Clay
Whitlock
Davis,
Jr. I
yes,
looked
that's
this
it.
up,
Yeah, he was also in The Wire.
which
And
I didn't know. I did not know he was in The Wire.
yeah, 'cause
I
you hadn't
only
seen it.
saw him in 25th Hour. And I noticed when we watched 25th Hour that he said shit all the time,
Yeah,
right? And
that's
I
his.
wrote that down in that movie, which was the first time I'd ever seen this guy. So in this movie, when he comes in, when I first see his face, I go, oh, it's the shit guy. So continue your story, please.
Yeah, and I actually don't. I had
You know?
initially thought that he sort of that definitely became his trademark because of The Wire, but now that Clockers was in 2002, I think The Wire started in 2002 as well. So now I don't know which came
I
first.
don't know. He must have been doing it for
Right.
years, man.
Yeah, maybe even before that it was his thing. But
He's famous
regardless,
for it now, though. He's
yeah,
got there's a
that's his.
bobblehead. You can get a little bobblehead that does it.
And that's his whole thing. But anyway, so after the two cops are like, "Oh, well, we're not going to get anything out of these guys," so they send him home, and then they stay in there in the witness room for a couple seconds, and they're like, "I can't believe we're not going to get anything out of them." And one of the guy goes, "Red Hook, baby," and then Isaiah Whitlock just goes, "She," and just like really elongates it for like 10 seconds. And I was like, oh, like if I was not watching for this podcast, I might have turned it off. I might have turned that movie off for that. Like, just terrible.
My
And
mind kind of exploded because I'd literally finished just writing that about the shit thing. So I was like, am I taking crazy pills?
I
Is this
literally wrote,
happening?
come on, and I ended it. And
Almost like there's almost like behind the scenes, like you imagine this thing of like Spike Lee being like, so maybe in this scene, like don't do the shit thing. Like
yeah,
it's not really gonna work at all for what we're going for. And he's like, I gotta do it, Spike.
Like, is my
I
thing.
gotta do it.
he's
It's
like,
my thing. It's my
you
thing.
hired
I
me.
gotta do it.
I'm doing 1 day of work on set here. This is why you hired
And
me.
I'm
I'm
gonna
gonna
say
stay the line.
shit.
I mean, that's essentially how it felt. And and then they go home and they wake up the next day, and then Enoch takes his grandson to the airport to go back home, and there's one like throwaway line about how the board of the church or congregation or whatever wants to meet with him, and he's likely going to be fired because all this stuff came out and he admitted to it, and that's it. And then we get treated to this just like banally saccharine montage at the end, where even to the point where they show Enoch like standing with his grandson and Chaz the girl, like, like everyone's a happy family now, and then the final shot is just Chaz the girl as she stares into the camera, and then a rainbow appears in the background for the like the more you know thing they used to have on NBC. Like, I'm not even making this up, and I just could not believe it. And so I was the whole thing felt like I was like, this, you're better than this, Spike Lee. You're better than this. And the whole, it was very displeasing to me, the whole movie. And yeah, I can't. This week is the most unhappy I've been about the movies since I was forced to watch The Counselor again last season.
Shit.
And if you remember how much I hated The Counselor, that tells you how I feel about this week.
It was.
Well, should we jump on into Cape Fear? Because now I'm just curious what.
Steve, now I got to hear
I
you.
have.
It sounds like you might have actually liked Cape Fear, Steve. So
Okay,
let's let
so
you lead
here's
this off and see if there's any sort of positivity here.
Okay, so
But
here's my thing with Cape Fear.
hang on.
Here's my thing with
But
Cape Fear.
before we dive into Cape Fear, there was one thing. There was one thing that I really, really liked in Red Hook Summer, and I didn't know if I read too much into this or if it was so obvious that like I started overthinking it, and I was like, oh no, of course he meant to do this. And so I wanted to get your guys' take. So there's the Spike Lee's co-writer on this. I can't remember his name. John McBride, I think. He's got a very interesting religious background and story, and I think he even like founded a church that's in Red Hook, and there's a big reason why this story is written and set there. It's a lot to do with him, but regardless, I think either he in his past or someone he was close to has some serious problems with religion. I think I'm saying that, I'm speculating, because the scene where Bishop Enoch and the I think it's the oh gosh, what's her name, Sister Darling, are talking on the couch, and they're criticizing.
That was a different person. Sister Darling, I don't think she really had much of a role. I can't remember.
Who?
That is
Okay.
that woman
It's
is
Chaz's mom, but I
Chaz's
can't remember what
mom.
her
It's
name is.
Chaz's
Oh, okay.
mom.
I didn't know. Okay, I never caught. I guess I didn't. Anyway, all right. So they, she essentially says, I'm not going to only pray. I'm going to, instead of just thoughts and prayers, I'm going to actually do some shit to try to,
not just preach, I will teach.
Yes.
I wrote that down. That's a good point. I forgot about that. I quite liked that scene as well.
So there's that, and then to reinforce that later, and this is what the part I talked about just a second ago, where I want to get your guys' opinion. In the big moment, the big confrontation in the church when Coleman Domingo, accuses Bishop Enoch and says, you molested me, and it becomes quite the thing. The other members of the congregation, it becomes quite heated, and the members of the congregation are like grabbing him and trying to toss him out. And Chaz, the girl, she has an asthma attack. Her inhaler falls on the ground, kind of under the pews, but still pretty obvious if anybody bothers to look down. And then there's this awesome scene where this sequence where someone, gosh, I can't remember the actor's name. He's in Civil War. He goes walking up the aisle towards the pulpit, and Bishop Enoch has his arms raised to the sky, beseeching God for something, calling for help, calling for assistance. Everyone's wailing and crying, and everyone's looking up to the sky. Help us, save this girl, help save this girl. And what she needs, she's having an asthma attack, is her goddamn inhaler, and it's laying on the ground. Literally anyone could reach down, pick it up, grab it, and they could solve this problem right here. So I thought the symbolism of that, it just seemed so fitting based on the conversation earlier. I'm not just going to preach, I'm going to teach. It's like we can't just look to the heavens and say, I need help. If if they just had bothered to look down also, they may have actually been able to help themselves and help her too. Did you guys catch that? Was that super obvious? Did I read too much into that?
I didn't really even notice it. I think the reason that I didn't even notice it is because, again, film seems so loosely. Roger Ebert even said, I read Roger Ebert's review, and Roger Ebert even said, like, it feels like he's just kind of making it up as he goes along. There's just not a lot that's very purposeful in this film. I mean, maybe that's something they intended, but I just don't feel like he's drawing a lot of attention to that, and so I can't really. It's just one of those movies where I can't really gather a lot of meaning from what he's trying to do or say. I mean,
Yeah.
even if that was his intention, film is just kind of it's so loosely pulled together that it doesn't if that is a point that's trying to be made, which would have been a really good point, it just doesn't get driven home in the way that Spike Lee would normally drive stuff like that home. That's what I think.
I agree with that. I agree. I just
Yeah.
thought it's the only nugget of this that I felt like I could pull out that I'm like, I really like that. I think that was good, but I don't know if he meant it. I don't know if that was intended. Jeff, did you catch it?
Definitely the scene, the conversation where she, because I specifically wrote that down of I'm not preaching, I'm teaching. I really liked that. And I didn't quite catch what you were saying, and that was a good catch. I did notice how, Enoch is holding his hands out and looking up to the sky, and my kind of interpretation of that at the time is that you know he talks all this game, but he's not even helping somebody when he can. It's like the that old joke, right, where it's if somebody's in a flood and they're on top of their house and somebody comes up in a rowboat and says, hey,
Yeah.
you know hop in, I'll take you, and he says, no, God is going to save me. And then somebody in a helicopter comes by and he says, no, God is going to save me, and then he dies, and he goes up to heaven and he says, why didn't you save me? He goes, I sent you a rowboat and a helicopter.
Yeah.
So it kind of almost reminded
That's
me
what
of
you
that a little bit, where it's
yeah,
like,
like
yeah, like,
I
why
gave
didn't
you
you
an
save this
inhaler.
girl? There's an
If you all had
inhaler.
just
It was
bothered to
right
look.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a good
Instead of
catch.
beseeching me for a guide. Yeah. I also loved how the tenor of his sermon immediately changed. He had been preaching love and acceptance and stuff, and the minute he gets accused of this, it's like fire and brimstone. When he starts calling down the the
Yeah, he's like, you
wrath of
you need
Satan.
help. You're mentally, and that's okay. It's okay to need help, but you need help. Get out of here. And yeah, it was.
There's some nuggets in there, but it's anyway. Okay.
Yeah.
You
All right,
guys want to
Nate,
travel south?
go. You wanted to start on Cape Fear. Hit me with it.
Here's what I think. Here's what I think about Cape Fear. I'd never seen Cape Fear. And it's just one of those movies that I've heard a lot about for a long time. I even wrote in my notes because we said last week about After Hours. I was like, oh, this is kind of almost like a Hitchcockian thing. This is clearly Cape Fear is his Hitchcock movie, like very purposefully so. He talks about it in interviews. They do some really interesting, like close-up, deep focus things, like with a character really close to the camera and then a character way in the background who's also in focus, which is kind of a very old classic Hollywood kind of thing. Here's what bothered me about Cape Fear. I really liked a lot of the movie. I thought it built a really interesting suspense. I think there's some great legacy casting. Like Robert Mitchum is a great actor from like Out of the Past and like a lot of these old great noir films, and he's
Side note.
perfectly cast in the.
Side note here: Cape Fear is actually a remake of a movie from, I think it was
Yes.
like the early '60s. Robert Mitchum
So
was the villain in that, and Gregory Peck, who played a lawyer
and
in
Gregory
this
Peck, yep,
one,
and so
was
Gregory Peck,
the Nick Nolte version, or Nick Nolte
yep.
character in that version.
So you've got some great legacy casting here. I think Robert De Niro in this movie is actually fantastic. I think it's a fantastic performance, and I do lose him a little bit in the role. Okay, now I can tell just from your physical. So Jeff has like the emoji shocked face, and Steve shook his head so hard that it actually blurred the image on my screen.
Give myself
Okay,
a headache.
I
I've
all
so
right.
violently shook my head back and forth.
I think he's actually really good. Here's what bothers me about the movie. I'll just say what bothers me about the movie, and I'll let you guys speak your piece. Okay. Now I'm curious as to like what you're gonna vote for. 'Cause you guys really hate this. Um, what I and I understand that it's a remake. I've never seen the original, so they're probably trying to be true to the original. The characterization of the Max Cady character, who's Robert De Niro in this film, he's obviously psychotic, but I wish that they would have buried that a little bit longer. There's a scene in the middle of the film where he really violently assaults this woman. And up until that point, and if that had not been in the movie, I feel like there would have been almost this, in terms of like being a buried secret, I feel like there would have been a little bit more suspense about what his actual motivations are, because the Nick Nolte character in this movie, his family's kind of messed up too. And there's clearly been some marital infidelities that they both kind of admit to in these subtle ways. The Nolte character gets a little physically abusive with his daughter and kind of manhandles his daughter. And if the scene where Max Cady had not violently assaulted the woman, if that were not there, I would kind of wonder more. It would have left me as a viewer more in suspense of like, does this guy like actually have a point? Like, is he where are the buried secrets? Is it this family that we're with? Are they actually the ones that are kind of the bad guys? But it gives up the ghost on that way too fast when it kind of shows the Katie character for who he is. Again, I'm sure they're trying to go. It's really remaking the original film. I'm sure they're trying to be true to that spirit. Um, but I just felt like there was an opportunity there to provide a little bit more suspense, and they didn't do it. And then the final thing I'll say about this is, and I just wrote it here, the climax of this film, the final act of this film, goes on way too long and gets absolutely ridiculous. That's when it completely runs off the rails to me. It very much was like the Austin Powers, like, why won't you die? Like this guy just like keeps coming back. Like they literally light this dude on fire. They pour lighter, like the girl sprays him with lighter fluid. And I even thought that, like, if it would have ended there, if that would have killed him, I would have been like, okay, it's a little silly, but that was kind of a cool conclusion that the daughter can. No, he just keeps coming back for more. He rises from the depths and keeps coming back for more, and it just gets sillier and sillier and sillier. It's got to be the peak of Scorsese's silliness in his whole filmography of how ridiculous the end of this movie gets. So, what did you guys think? You clearly did not like the Max Cady characterization by Robert.
So, like from the very first scene, right? They show Robert De Niro, and he's in prison, and he's working out, and he's got all these prison tats, and he's got this like slick back mullet thing going on. And I wrote down sarcastically, which you wouldn't be able to tell unless I told you, but I wrote it down sarcastically. Is Robert De Niro the bad guy? Like, it's just like, oh, I mean, like, it's a little obvious, you know? I wonder, we got to make sure the audience knows he's a bad guy, I guess. But it's just, and then like he started speaking, and this accent, I could not get past it. I simply could not. It is one of the worst film accents I have ever heard.
It is
I
so
was
bad.
just could not
So
believe.
bad.
And I
See,
think,
my hot take for this week is like I kind of liked the accent.
oh my God,
I didn't hate Robert De Niro in this. I did
I
not
thought
hate him in this.
I thought one of the biggest issues with this movie was, or with both movies, was casting. You know, we talked about the kids. That's not as much their fault. But you know, with Robert De Niro, like I just don't think he was right for this role, and I don't think that Nick Nolte was right. Maybe even if you switched him, it would have been better. But I think they probably should have just gotten different actors all the way around for
What do you
that.
what do you think about this? Originally, I read, I can't remember if it was in the book or online, but Scorsese wanted Harrison Ford to play the Nick Nolte character.
Oh yeah,
I think
that would
that
have
would have
been
been
that would
very
have been way
interesting.
better. And then you could have had Nick Nolte play the Robert De Niro role, and then we're talking,
Well,
right? Then it's a little bit better.
it wasn't there's also something that Harrison Ford, like he wanted Harrison Ford for the Nick Nolte character, but Harrison Ford wanted the Max Cady character. I think I read that
Yeah,
Oh
somewhere,
that's I
so
think
that
man,
that
like it
I
didn't
think
yes,
that's
work out.
exactly
Like
exactly.
Harrison
right.
Ford wanted to play the bad guy. Yeah.
Yeah, and that wouldn't have worked.
Oh, and
Harrison Harrison's right.
No,
that would have
that
been
would have been awful.
terrible. You're not Harrison Ford. That's not your thing, man. So,
Shit.
there you go. Yeah.
Shit.
Uh, but yeah, and then and like the whole idea of the buried secrets. One connection that I actually thought was interesting that I didn't foresee was that in both these movies, the main characters are using their sort of lot in life, if you will, or not lot in life. That's their station in life as a shield for who they once were, for these buried secrets, right? Like the Clark Peters Bishop Enoch character is using his religion as a shield for his past molestations, and then Nick Nolte, in that he's this high powered lawyer, and he's using that as his shield for for his infidelity with his wife, for being a shitty husband and father, it appears. But there was, there's just all these sort of weird tonal shifts, or not tonal shifts necessarily, but like these weird tonal things in the movies. Like at one point, the Nick Nolte goes into his daughter, or his daughter's bedroom, played by Juliette Lewis, who's fantastic in this movie, the bright spot of the film. She was nominated for an Oscar for this. But he goes into her room and she's like just chilling on the bed in like this like sort of risque underwear, and she's supposed to be like 15 in the movie. And it's because this is one of the few I always tell my wife, Jackie, I always tell her what movies I'm gonna watch for the podcast in case she wants to watch one with me. And she wanted it. She had heard a lot about Cape Fear and she hadn't seen it. She had seen the original actually, but she wanted to watch it. So we watched it together, and she thought that was weird too. She's like, "No 15-year-old girl would ever just like chill there in your underwear as your dad comes in and then like sits down on the bed with you." This is like this really weird situation. But then we started talking about it, and it kind of brought up, Nate, what you were saying, where um there was almost this idea of Max Cady and the Nick Nolte character almost being like mirrors of each other, right? Like there's this sort of idea of, okay, this, he's a successful lawyer, and he, to the outside world, he looks better and more presentable, but is he really any better? He didn't rape an underage woman like Max Cady did to get him in jail, but he's unfaithful to his wife. He manhandles his daughter, like you said. He's, he
He buried. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not really
So,
evidence. Like it's pretty. It's
oh,
shitty evidence, but like he did not. He admits it. I did not give my client the best defense possible.
yeah,
There
I
were,
have so many.
there were
Oh my god.
and
As
that is and that
not.
is and it's weird because, especially, okay, trying to go through the lens of 1991, right, when Cape Fear came out, and then the idea of, like, back then, I think the general feeling for most people, like if you were to have a trial, or somebody was put on trial for rape, right, you would have um, a lot of people would think that a woman's sexual history prior to being raped is relevant, and is a character, would have probably thought that it was a character flaw in the woman that would have, gone towards the favor of someone like Max Cady in court. And these are things, there's definitely a long history of that sort of thing happening. Whereas the discourse today and the general feeling today is, and I would say rightfully so, is the opposite, where it's like woman's sexual history has no bearing on whether or not a rape is actually a rape, right? Like that is not a thing that should matter. So
I
it's weird
you're right.
seeing
It
it through
shouldn't
the.
matter. I think you're being Pollyanna-ish if you think that it doesn't, like.
No, it
Yeah.
still happens in court today, but I think the discourse and the general feeling on it has come quite a long way.
Yeah. Certainly.
and
Certainly.
and
We've
and
turned a corner.
in the past,
Hopefully.
33 years ago,
Yeah.
it would have been, you have a report like that, he's almost certainly getting off, right? Whereas now, I don't think it's as much of a slam dunk as it would have been at the time. Is all my point. But and especially that was 14 years after he had got convicted. So technically, in the movie's time frame, he was convicted in 1977. So especially then, you say anything about a woman being promiscuous, and they probably would have let him walk. Um, but anyway, it's just it was just sort of weird, like looking through the lens of today, and then trying to go back to then, but then and so it's seen as this whole thing where he's the bad guy for bearing this not the bad guy in this the movie necessarily, but he's not doing his job appropriately for bearing this evidence, which technically is true. But then at the end, he says like, I did it because you deserved what you got for doing what you did to that girl, which it's like, okay, that's the morally correct stance, but it's not the legally correct one in terms of what his responsibility is as a lawyer. So that whole thing was really weird, where I really tried to have to say, okay, how look at this like it's 1991, not through today's lens. Um, but I don't know, just overall, it just there was so many things that you talked about it, Nate, where it's like very like nakedly Hitchcockian, right? Like he's just trying really, really hard. And Martin Scorsese,
He even has the Yeah, he even has remember and I did think it was genuinely kind of surprising, like having never seen the film, but he literally even had like pure psycho that uh, De Niro is disguised as
oh
the
god,
Oh
maid,
my
as the
god.
housekeeper,
That was
and
oh
turns and chokes him, and it was like this
that
is
was so
like pure
ridiculous.
psycho. It's like, oh,
I
he's
learned
dressed.
this in
I see.
prison, he
Like,
says.
yeah, I just like,
What
okay,
the
I see. He's
fuck?
dressed up
This
like he's
movie
my
is the
faking out.
stupidest goddamn movie we've watched
my
in the
my
two
wife
seasons that we've
my
done
wife
this thing.
my wife went up to go to the bathroom, and she came back. I said, I had to rewind it. I said, you have to see this. And I literally
Yeah.
said Robert De Niro as a Norman Bates. And it was just like, oh my God. But Martin Scorsese, if you're listening, we love you because you're Martin Scorsese, not because you're Alfred Hitchcock. I want to go see Alfred Hitchcock. I'm going to go watch him. I got plenty of Alfred Hitchcock movies I can watch. We don't need Alfred Hitchcock through the eyes of Martin Scorsese. And I think that a true Martin Scorsese version of this movie maybe could have been good, but this one was not it. And I felt like both of these movies, where it was kind of interesting because so Who's That Knocking at My Door came out in 68, and then Cape Fear in 91. So Scorsese was roughly 25 years into his career at this point. And then She's Gotta Have It came out in 86, Red Hook Summer 2012. So Spike Lee, 26 years, roughly about the same point in their careers when they made these movies, oddly enough. And for both of them, I felt it was a massive regression for each movie. And I felt embarrassed for both of these directors that they made these movies. I looked up afterwards, we looked up Cape Fear, and the Rotten Tomato score is like 76%. And I wanted to light my phone on fire. I was
But
like, there's
critics
no
or
way.
fans?
There's critics. There's no way
Yeah.
that this many people can think this movie was any good. Like,
So
I
that's
just,
why I was so shocked when you two said that you disliked this movie, because I thought I was going to be the sole dissenting voice, the lone babe in the woods here that was like, you people are all goddamn fucking crazy people. This is the worst movie in the world. And yet apparently no, we all agree. We're all civilized people on this podcast. But I'm with you. I was looking at reviews and people are like, this is a masterpiece. This is his Hitchcockian
it's so
suspense.
suspenseful. It's such a great thriller. Like, what? What
I'm
movie
like,
did you watch?
this is a parody of Alfred Hitchcock. It's
And the worst, you mentioned, Nate, the whole scene, it goes on way too long. And when Jackie was telling me about the how she watched the original, she said one of the biggest things I remember is that the ending scene on the houseboat was really long. So maybe that was like sort of source material thing. But even beyond how much that scene dragged, the final scene where Max Cady finally dies, he's handcuffed by his ankle to this piece of wood and a railing from the ship. The ship, by the way, hits like a rock that's jutting out of the river, but it's not like a massive rock. But then this ship completely disintegrates from this small rock. Like, it would have put a hole in a ship, but this ship completely just like disintegrates. It was the most unrealistic boat crash I've ever seen. and I've watched Anaconda. Anyway, so but then he's on this piece and he's handcuffed there, and as he's slowly sinking down, he starts singing, and he's singing like this weird, like I don't even know what it was,
It's a
some
hymn.
hymn or
Yeah.
something. And I was just like,
It would have fit well actually
This
during
is-
one of the sermons in Red Hook Summer.
there you go. But it was just like, this is the most asinine, dumb thing I have like ever seen. I was like, I cannot believe Scorsese would do this, would film it, would think it's a good idea, then
It's
film
bad.
it, continue to think it's a good idea, see it edited in a final project, and think, "Yep, that's it. That's what I want," and go with it. I'm just like, I'm befuddled. As much as
The-
I expected going into this week, I expected that these two movies would be movies that I would never likely not want to watch again because of the difficulty of the subject matter. Is why I thought that's why I wouldn't want to do it, wouldn't want to watch them again. But it turns out that no, I don't want to watch that again because the one biggest thing that these movies have in common is that they both suck. And this is the toughest week I've ever had picking a winner just because I dislike the movies, both of them so much.
Oh.
I am so curious what you guys are gonna pick here.
So
I thought, I mean, oh man,
well, I got a couple things to say about Cape Fear. You guys have
yeah.
you certainly have the gist of my thoughts. I definitely do not like it. I was just shocked because I thought you guys would. I think my biggest problem with it, aside from the other things we've said, it's so freaking on the nose. Like with the tattoos, and he's got like you said, he's got
And these
cutouts of
close-ups of the
Stalin on
tattoo.
his
It insists upon
It
it.
insists upon
It
it.
insists upon itself. Like that, it really is that.
The line I wrote down at the very end, you know, and he's like, "I'm gonna kill you." Nick Nolte's character yells at him. He said, "You're already sacrificed to me, counselor." It's like, oh my, you don't have to say that out loud. If you made a good movie, you don't have to say that out loud.
Yeah, and he keeps
like,
hey, what a coincidence that Max Cady keeps referring to Nick Nolte's character as counselor, just like Javier Bardem in The Counselor did to
That's
Michael
true.
Fassbender,
Our
which
two
may
worst.
be the two movies that I've hated the most in
So-
this entire run of seasons here. So any movie that has any counselor in it, no longer do I want to watch it. I'm out.
And I guess they wanted. So, all right. I started having a lot more fun with the movie when I imagined instead just throw out all kind of the backstory and all the really a lot of the dialogue, frankly. And I reimagined this as an unofficial sequel to Halloween, except it's called 4th of July. And he is Michael Myers.
For those that don't know, Steve is a massive Halloween fan. Just want to put that out there.
And if you look at it like that, it makes a lot more sense as a movie. This fucker can't die. He will not stop coming. There's no real logic behind it. We don't, I mean,
Wait, we talked about how he got burned and then he came back, but like his face, it's like it looks like a Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, Freddy Krueger burnt face. And so I literally wrote down, I'm like, is this a horror movie now? What is this?
You forgot that's after he spent 400 goddamn miles hanging below a station wagon or whatever goddamn car
we
it was.
totally forgot that. We're like, what? Jackie and I are like,
I literally burst out laughing when I saw that.
I mean, they did show him like having a belt that he strapped in to at least help him a little bit, but he's still got to like hold up his upper body. I mean, maybe that's why they kept showing him working out so much so that they could make it plausible that he had the strength to do that. But fuck no, that was.
And that woman, the season when he crawls out of underneath that car, she's just like, okay, I'm not going to say anything. Not going to say a single word that a man just crawled out of underneath the vehicle. His shirt is covered in, scratches. Anyway, this movie's stupid. Martin Scorsese, I respect the hell out of you. Robert De Niro, respect the hell out of you. This movie is really bad.
Hey,
it's not good.
Everybody gets one pass on a bad movie.
After Hours is my favorite Martin Scorsese movie. This might be my least favorite Martin Scorsese movie.
Oh, this is 100% my least favorite. I haven't seen all of them, all of Martin Scorsese's movies, but I can't I have seen movie like Gangs of New York is a Martin Scorsese movie that I don't particularly like, but excuse me, I understand why people do, and
Yeah,
I can see that there's some objective good filmmaking involved. This movie, nothing, none of that. There's just anybody
it's just
that likes Cape
cranked up
Fear.
to 11.
I've
Even
lost some respect for
well,
you.
even things that are normally like so fantastic. Thelma Schoonmaker is normally just elite, and I feel like now her editing in this movie is too manic. Like it's just everything's dialed up too much, and I don't know. I knew
Jessica Lange is a two-time
yeah,
Oscar winner, and
yeah.
she was relegated to a Steven Spielberg level nagging wife role in this whole movie, and it was just like annoying. Like there was one good scene where Nick Nolte and Jessica Lange were like sitting on the bed and they were talking about their infidelity, and they kind of were like having this sort of seething fight where they weren't quite like angry and confrontational quite yet, but they were discussing, and that was good. But other than that, it's just like you wasted it, wasted such a talented actress, and it was frustrating.
I knew that I personally was going to be in for a bad time about a third of the way into this movie when we we learn the reason that the buried secret basically. Nick Nolte tells his boss Fred Thompson, RIP. I guess we want him to RIP. I don't know. He wound up being political at the end. So anyway, he was great in Die Hard too. So I'll give him that. But he tells his boss, "Hey, I had this report when I was his public defender. You referenced this earlier, of course. That said that the woman that he allegedly attacked and raped,
A
he called it
sexual
a
history
rape kit.
report, he called it.
Well, first he called it a rape kit first, which is interesting because that implies that there's all kinds of weird
Oh,
procedural
I guess I
questions
didn't catch
about that.
Okay.
Because like I don't know why the defense attorney has this, and because that usually is something the investigators would have, i.e. the police, which therefore the prosecutor would have, which prosecutors would then have to disclose to the defense attorney. How he got his hands on this first, I don't know. None of that makes any sense. So there's all kinds of weird question marks there. But what he did is not only like yeah, well, you kind of fucked up, that's like the cardinal sin for a defense attorney. I mean, that breaks almost every ethical duty I can think of. And Fred Thompson's his boss is just like, yeah, well, that's pretty bad. And he quotes like part
Yeah,
of the
I will at
Constitution at
least
him.
give them I will at least give them props for the fact that they straight up called him out and they were like, "Yeah, this is terrible."
But did they just move right on?
That's
He
true.
doesn't say, well, oh, okay, well, you're fired. I have to report to the bar right now that, um, as lawyers, you have a duty to report when you know another attorney has committed something like that. And instead, we just gloss it over. And it's just, okay, well, that, and it's never brought up again. Well, I mean, of course, it's probably, you know what I mean? But the ethical ramifications of it in terms of whether, I mean, I guess it is referenced when, um, they say that they call the ABA to try to pull this thing, but that's only because he threatened Robert De Niro on tape. Anyway, this movie's dumb.
So
It's real dumb. I want to see the 1962 movie.
one thing I will
Is
say,
it
I actually
any
watched
better?
after watching Cape Fear, I watched the trailer for the original, and it does look better. Robert Mitchum's accent is not nearly as annoying. So, but I'm trying to the actress, the woman that he assaults in the middle of it, Elena Douglas.
She was Martin Scorsese's partner at the time.
Oh, was she? Because
That's what Wikipedia tells me.
she was like huge in the 90s. She was in a bunch of movies, and and then she just like disappeared. And so I've seen her in a bunch of stuff, but I thought one of the bright spots was this was her best performance that I think she's ever given in any of her movies. So props to her for that. And Juliette Lewis was also very good.
Yeah, we should say
I mean,
Juliette Lewis was nominated for an Oscar
yeah.
for this.
So now I will say, as we start to make our decision here, again, this is one of the hardest for me for all the wrong reasons. But I think this boils down to two things. There were basically one scene in each movie that was a saving grace. That was the scene when Robert De Niro is talking to Juliette Lewis in the theater and is manipulating her and sort of coming on to her, even though she's underage. She's because they mentioned at some point her birthday's coming up and she's about to turn 16, which would be the same age as the woman that Katie had previously raped that sent him to prison. So there's that sort of like, we're obviously meant to draw that connection there. And then he's, you know, coming on to her in this theater, and she's like feels nervous, but she's receptive to it. The whole thing feels icky, but it was, in terms of like acting and directing, was a very good scene. And then similarly, the scene we've talked about when Coleman Domingo confronts Clark Peters, Bishop Enoch in Red Hook Summer, that was the best scene in that movie. So it kind of boiled down to like, which single scene in either movie did I like better? And I mean, I think if I have to go with one, I think I pick Red Hook Summer, just because it at least has something that it's trying to say. And I just like, it was, to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, Steve, some of it was just boring and not well done. And I didn't like it. And I was embarrassed for Spike Lee to a degree, but I don't know that I was quite as insulted as I was by Cape Fear. And I think it comes so much of it comes back down to Robert De Niro's just atrocious accent. I can't do it.
It's so bad. Apparently he studied, or maybe somebody in the production studied like accents of people in rural Georgia and shit,
I don't
but
believe it.
I don't care. It sounds like fucking Foghorn Leghorn like drank some cough syrup and screwed around,
Well,
tried to like
it didn't
pretend he was
sound
Pokey
natural.
Pig.
It
I don't
sounded
even
like
know what it is. I don't know.
It sounded like an impersonation because he was trying to use the accent on every single word. And if you've heard
So
anybody
bad.
speak with an accent, it doesn't necessarily come through as strong on every single word. And he was like, now, counselor, you better not. Like, he's really hamming it up. And it was just
He's
awful.
in the theater now with us, right? Max Cady in the theater, in the podcast studio.
I think these are both weaker movies of theirs, certainly. You you guys moved me a little bit. Help move the needle a little bit. My initial thought though, coming into this recording, I think I'm gonna probably stick with it. My vote is actually going to be Cape Fear. And the reason that is because if nothing else, Steve, I mean, you kind of brought up the central point of Red Hook Summers, that it's just so boring. And if nothing else, Cape Fear is bad, but in an entertaining way. And I could see myself rewatching it just for the fun of it.
You would put
I don't
yourself
think
through that again?
I don't think I ever will. Like I don't think I ever will. But just as like a cultural touch point, it's just kind of funny. Um, and I think that, and I have to be consistent. I'm nothing if not but consistent. A couple of weeks ago, I was so harsh about Casino because I thought Martin Scorsese was being so lazy and he was just doing a total retread and being completely derivative of everything he's ever done. I have to give Scorsese a little bit of credit here that even though it's not done well, he went out on a limb to try and do this other thing and try and take this other very famous director's style and at least kind of emulate it. He didn't do a very good job with that. It's almost like a parody of it, but I'm going to give it to the director that I think is doing something a little bit more different. And in terms of the theme of the week of buried secrets, I just feel like Cape Fear in its tone and its suspense fits that theme a lot more than this very random, awkward thing that's suddenly forced into Red Hook Summer. If I'm looking at the whole movie and I'm looking at this is what the theme is for the week, Cape Fear just fits that more than Red Hook Summer for me. So, Steve, I love the weeks where you got to break a tie.
To you, buddy. What's it going to be?
All right. I wrestled with this last night. Is there any plausible scenario in which we can just say, no, we're just not gonna award a winner this week. We're just gonna go back to the drawing board and just pick 2 new movies and just scrap the whole thing. But no, that we can't do that. This is Duel of the Greats, and we can't have a disqualification. Somebody has to lie beaten upon the field of battle. And this week, the victor is going to be, God damn it, it's going to be Martin Scorsese and Cape Fear. For the simple reason, Nate, you essentially you kind of said my thinking. The great Elie Wiesel, survivor of the Holocaust, author of Night and the was it Dawn and
I just
Day.
want to state I have no idea where you're about to go with this analogy, but continue.
Yeah, I'm here for it, though.
Okay.
Where are we going?
Continue. Continue.
He has a famous quote that the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. And if anything, I was just bored to tears by Red Hook Summer for 90% of it. And so, if anything, I find myself I'm more indifferent about that movie. Cape Fear, I'm gonna think about this stupid fucking movie for the rest of my life because I hate it so goddamn much. Like, this is gonna go on my list of most hated movies. It really is.
I think if it was just hate, I might have been able to convince myself, but I felt insulted.
Yeah,
I
that's
felt
why.
like
That's part of the reason.
that's why I couldn't go with it, because it's like,
So it's been memorable at the very least, and because of that, I guess that means I feel more passionate about it than Red Hook Summer.
there it is. And that
And
is
it does fit the theme like perfectly. I mean, this is something that is coming back to haunt him. I mean, I guess the other one has it. Anyway, yeah, it's Martin Scorsese, Cape Fear. Also, for my money, the single coolest sequence, series of shots in either of these two movies was like 15 seconds. Blink and you might miss it. But when they're locking down the house to try to basically lay a honey trap to have De Niro get caught sneaking into the house, and before he dresses like the maid, before that scenario, there's a quick little scene where Nick Nolte like slams all the shutters and like locks some doors, and it's just like bam, 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 and it's just real quick, and it's very Hitchcockian, but in a good way. And I don't know, just that it was beautiful. It was beautiful filming, and that right
it's
there.
like the
won me
random
over.
X-ray camera.
Yeah, what was with that
shots.
too?
And then like at the very end when they focus on the daughter and she's like, and we never spoke of this again, and then it goes X-ray and then it goes red, and
I feel like you
it's like,
talk about that again.
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, oh, look at this. Yeah, it's like, and then it's like, are we trying to say that she's evil now? Is she evil because of this experience? Like, there's just no expiration,
Ooh,
and
maybe did they? Okay, I'm thinking Halloween again. Spoilers for the most recent
oh, there you
Halloween.
go.
Maybe
Is she
this.
the next? Is she the
Yeah,
next Max Katie? Maxine Katie?
I'm telling you guys. Think about it. Think about this movie just called Fourth of July, and it's him as Michael Myers. It's way better.
Halloween season of the bit. Never mind.
Yeah, it's way better.
So there we go. That is. I honestly did not think Scorsese would win, and somehow I was the only one that voted for the
Yeah, we
the
switched. We
Spike
switched
Lee
our
movie.
directors.
I
We
kind of want to
switched
take
it.
points away from both of them this week.
Yeah,
I
perhaps
wish we
we
could do
should.
that.
They each lose a point.
Each loses a point. Yes. Um, but that brings our total now, our tally, to Martin Scorsese with 4 and Spike Lee with 3. And we go into another interesting week here. We've got this little stretch here in the middle of the season that is just a lot of interesting matchups that I don't think it was very clear how it's going to go. So I'm excited. Next week will be another one. Um, this will be our courting controversy week. 2 very controversial movies from these directors. Martin Scorsese has The Last Temptation of Christ, a movie that was condemned by the Catholic Church, and then Spike Lee has Bamboozled, a movie that was very controversial involving people putting on a minstrel show on cable TV. So it'll be very interesting. I've seen Last Temptation of Christ, but it's been a long time, and I've never seen Bamboozled. So it'll be very interesting to see both these movies and to see who sort of courted controversy the best here. So if you want to follow along, Last Temptation of Christ, Bamboozled, watch those movies. We're going to be talking about them next week. as we march along. Now we've crossed the halfway point of season 2, so we're on the downslope as we move on. But next week, Last Temptation of Christ, Bamboozled. We'll be back. We'll see you then. Until then, thank you all so much for listening. We appreciate you so much. But we'll hope to see you next week. And until then, thanks for stopping by.